Welcome to an introduction to A Course in Miracles. As people are introduced to A Course in Miracles for the first time, often several questions arise. This CD is intended to answer those questions for you, to give you a little insight into what A Course in Miracles can offer you. Today we'll be discussing A Course in Miracles with Mr. Gene Skaggs. Gene has been a student of A Course in Miracles since 1979 and has written 4 books on the Course entitled A Beginner's Glossary to A Course in Miracles, The Relationship Game, Changing the Rules, 101 Questions and Answers on the Course, and Biblical Quotes from A Course in Miracles Reinterpreted. He's currently writing his 5th book. He presently teaches 3 classes a week on the Course, has a degree in psychology, and a private counseling practice. He's a certified Psych K facilitator, does workshops, public speaking, and retreats around the country. Gene, thanks for joining us today.
Tony, I want to thank you today for having me here and recording of this CD on A Course in Miracles, and I'm sure to help a lot of novices in the Course in Miracles and those maybe even who have studied the Course in a little bit more in depth. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to get started. Let's just jump right into the questions. Let's start with one here that is very often that I hear from other people. How did A Course in Miracles come into manifestation?
Okay, Tony, what I'm going to do is give you an answer to that. You have to understand, though, in the contents of this CD, it's going to be a rather short one, so here it goes. A Course in Miracles began with the decision of 2 people, Helen Schucman and William Thetford. They both wanted to share a common goal of having a peaceful relationship. They both were professors of medical psychology at Columbia University, of physicians and surgeons in New York City. William was the head of the department and Helen was right under him. Both were mainly concerned with their work and how they were viewed by the world. Helen was born of Jewish faith, but was a non-practicing Jew and actually wanted nothing to do with anything related to religion. William, a gay gentleman, had an extremely high IQ and even devised tests for the FBI and CIA to determine if people were lying. Their relationship was anything but peaceful and mirrored nothing that the Course in Miracles spoke of. They fought constantly on how to run the department. One day, William, better known amongst his friends as Bill, told her there must be a better way to interact with one another. Helen herself was quite startled by this comment, but felt inwardly drawn to Bill's remarks, although not knowing why. That night, Helen went to sleep, and when she awoke the next morning, she heard an inner dictation that said, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take note." I remember reading that when I first heard that, and looking at her, you could almost see her shaking. She actively dismissed this inner dictation, but the voice kept coming back to her and repeating the same thing. "This is A Course in Miracles, please take note." She actually thought she was going crazy, and where they worked, they had rooms that contained people who heard voices. One day, out of sheer desperation, she mentioned to Bill that after the talk the other day, she heard this voice that said, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take note." Luckily, Bill calmed her down and assured her she wasn't going crazy, because at that time she actually thought she was, and simply said something in the order of, "Why don't you write down what the voice is saying and bring it back to me in the morning, and we will listen to it." She agreed, and that night this inner dictation spoke to her again and said, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take note." Helen said, "Who is this speaking to me?" The answer she heard was not what she expected, as the voice replied, "Jesus." Now she really thought she was losing it, because she felt there was no way that Jesus was speaking to her. She reported in the morning to Bill, who had sworn to secrecy, not to reveal anything about their discussions, what the voice had said. Once again, Bill calmed her down, assured her she was not going crazy, and proceeded to tell her, "Ask the voice what messages it has for you." Over the next 7 years, which started in the late 1960s and ran through the early 70s, Helen would take down what the voice had said in shorthand and take it to Bill in the morning, and Bill would type it out. They put this in a rough format and made 12 copies of it. They thought they knew a few people who might be interested in the manuscript, thus the reason for only making 12 copies. Well, the interest was way more than they could have conceived, and within a year, they had a wealthy donor to commit to putting the manuscript into a book format and pay for the first printing. The Course in Miracles came out in 1976 and early 1977.
That sounds remarkable. Gene, I'm impressed with that. Let me ask you another question. What's the main doctrine of A Course in Miracles?
Well, first of all, A Course in Miracles is actually 3 books that you have in your hand. It looks like one, but it's 3. When it was first distributed, it actually came in the form of 3 books, and you carried them around, and you kind of look like a book nerd in a way, and everybody kind of chuckled at you. But now, luckily, they just have it in one book. The first book is called a text, and it is the analytical part of the book. It portrays that there are distinct levels of reality. The first level is the level of God or heaven. In this plane or frequency, there is only love, and that type of love has no beginning and no end. This love is ever expanding and without limits. Our Creator is beating to a frequency of love. Therefore, the Course points out that God will never forgive us. The reason for this particular statement is God only loves us. There has to be condemnation before forgiveness is needed. Since God will never condemn us nor judge us, God has no reason to forgive us. The Course also points out that at this level, this is something beyond our current comprehension, given where most of us are at on the ladder back to God. The reason the Course makes such a statement is we are trying to give us a picture of infinity within a finite mind. They're also trying to show us a oneness, but we're trying to comprehend it from a dualistic thought system. The second level in which the Course is written is the Course is mainly concerned, and the main focus of the Course is a level of thought or cause. It points to the fact that our mind is actually split in half. As scientists would say, we have a right brain and a left brain. One part of our mind is listening to the voice for God, noted in the Course as the Holy Spirit, and the other part listens to our ego. The ego is a voice that tells us that you are a bad person, that you are guilty, that you have sinned, and you deserve to be punished. You are separate from God as well as your brothers and sisters, and must get things from your brothers and sisters for you to be happy. The voice of God tells us very gently that we are one with our Creator, one with our brothers and sisters, that we are loved and loving, that you will make mistakes, but those mistakes are erased by the Holy Spirit, thus avoiding the need to punish oneself, that you are one with all that God has in store for you and all the good that God has in store for you, if you only allow it to come forth. What blocks us from achieving what our hearts desires is guilt. Guilt comes from the thinking we have been something bad. These feelings produce the feelings of guilt. One of the main aspects of guilt is that it demands punishment. Therefore, we believe by punishing ourselves we can alleviate our guilt. But in actuality, all we do is repress these unloving thoughts. These repressed thoughts will have to resurface, and usually in a more intense manner. The Holy Spirit offers us an antidote to all our unloving thoughts, and that is forgiveness. You will find A Course in Miracles is the most redundant book you'll ever put your hands on. It has one answer to all your perceived problems, and that being forgiveness. Now, the Course has a different take on forgiveness than what is portrayed in your Judeo-Christian doctrines. There are 4 steps in the forgiveness process. The first 2 steps are undertaken by us, and the final 2 are undertaken by the Holy Spirit. The first step in the forgiveness process is to align cause and effect in its proper sequence. In our egoic thought system, the world is set up that it will dictate to us how we should feel. Therefore, the world is the cause, and we are its effects. In that frequency, we have become a reactor. So the first step entails you recognizing that you're the cause of the world, and people and events are the result of your thinking. With this concept now in our mind, one looks outwardly, and now one is aware that the world is simply a mirror of our thoughts. So if one doesn't like what one sees and the emotion it brings forth, one can change what one sees by changing one's thoughts. The Course is the most empowering book you ever put your hands on, as it helps you realize that you make your world. And if you don't like what you see, you can change it because you made it. You are no longer at the mercy of the world or people in the world. Now we have completed our part and owned our event or anything that happens to us in our life. In other words, we recognize we created this situation, and now we can turn and look at our feelings about the situation and turn them over to the Holy Spirit. Notice I said we turn our feelings about the situation over to the Holy Spirit. You don't actually have to name the particular feelings, although most of the time it is evident. All one needs to know is the feeling is something other than love, and you no longer desire that thought. The third step is taken by the Holy Spirit, and that being the Holy Spirit removes your individual thoughts that you no longer desire and replaces them with love. The fourth step in this process of forgiveness is that the Holy Spirit will guide you in what course of action you should take. The Holy Spirit might guide you into taking no action at all, but that in and of itself is action. Please don't try and figure out what your ego would tell you to do and do the exact opposite, because there will be numerous times when the Holy Spirit will guide you in taking the same course of action that your ego would guide you. The difference is that your action will be coming from love, and love will produce love. Action taken from fear will produce fear. Another doctrine that the Course presents is how to have a healthy relationship with your brothers and sisters. The Course is mainly concerned with you remembering you are a child of God. How it goes about reawakening you to that remembrance is by transcending your relationships with those that the Course would call special or neediness to holy or unconditional. Remember, its main focus is in having you remember you are one with God. It points to the fact that this cosmic relationship that we have with God is almost impossible to deal with. It is not asking us to heal our relationship with God, but to heal our relationship with our brothers and sisters. In healing our relationship with our brothers and sisters, we automatically heal it with God. The reason for this is that we are one with our brothers and sisters, and we are one with God. Therefore, in the transformation from our egoic thought system to that of the Holy Spirit's, we enable this transformation of a relationship with our Creator to be established.
That's pretty exciting, and you said a whole lot there. I can understand why people might get confused when they first start looking at the Course. How does the Course want us to live from day to day?
Tony, I appreciate your last comments here, because the Course at times can seem to be somewhat of a daunting undertaking, but all the Course is asking you to is to have a little bit of willingness to want the peace of God more than you want to punish your brother and your sister. And that's really the bottom line on a lot of their doctrines there. So in answering your specific question there from a day-to-day perspective, the Course would like for you to wake up in the morning, ask the Holy Spirit something in the order of, show me what course of action I might take with my brothers and sisters that mirror love. And when fear comes into your awareness, to embrace it, to own it, but then release it so the Holy Spirit can replace those unwanting thoughts with love. And that's what we're here to do. You turn it over, you ask the Holy Spirit to replace it with love, and then you embrace that love. Ask yourself as often as possible a simple statement: how can I extend love in this moment? To remember that your brothers and sisters are only capable of two emotions, one being the emotion of love, and the other, as the Course would refer to, as a cry for help. I always kind of chuckled when I first saw that word, cry for help. The terminology, a cry for help, simply means that your brothers and your sisters are projecting their guilt onto you. So when we listen to the voice for God, when someone extends love, we receive that love and reciprocate it back with love. When our brothers and sisters are projecting their guilt onto us, we recognize they are crying out for help, and we respond in answering that cry for help with forgiveness and love. In the dynamics of forgiveness, we remove the unloving thoughts not only in ourselves, but our brothers and our sisters who have lost their way.
Gene, are there any study groups available to help someone like myself to understand the Course in Miracles? Maybe supplemental material available on the Course in Miracles?
Tony, luckily now, not when I first studied the Course in 1979, there are various groups available in every state of the Union. All one has to do is go on the internet and punch in ACIM study group, and it will take you to various sites, and you can punch in your city, your state, and it will show you the different groups under that particular zip code. There are various supplementary material, books, CDs, etc., all available on the course, or one can simply go to my website at www.onemiracle.org, and it will list the books and CDs I personally have available.
Gene, is the Course in Miracles affiliated with any churches?
The Course is not affiliated with any churches, but Unity Church seems to be very compatible with the Course. Thus, you will find the majority of Unity churches either have a Course group or they are Course-friendly. I have personally found that most people who study the Course and that go to a church seem to attend either a Unity Church or Science of Mind.
Gene, why would you recommend someone study the Course?
First of all, you should only study the Course if your life is not bringing you this elusive happiness that we all are seeking. The Course is the most empowering book you ever put your hands on, in that it shows you that all the events of your world were solely your making. Therefore, if you created them, you can undo them. It will give you the tools to transform your world through the dynamics of forgiveness.
Gene, is it complicated to master the Course in Miracles?
Tony, I have to chuckle when I hear a question like that, because the obvious answer is yes. But when you really understand the Course's doctrine, it's an extremely simple one. The Course has one answer to all your numerous perceived problems, and that being forgiveness. The Course does go into great painstaking detail to explain your egoic thought system, and that is where people have said, and I personally agree, that the deciphering process can be perplexing. Our egoic thought system is nothing more than one defense system upon another. Once you think you have it figured out, it will simply present you with another problem. All your problems, which solely stem from the thought that you have separated from God and you're a bad person, will continue to manifest themselves on your personal viewing screen. Thus, the reason for never fixing your problem is that you are fixing the wrong problem. We are fixing an internal problem externally. The ego has convinced us that others are the cause of our pain, and thus the need to fix them and not ourselves. As long as we go about fixing an internal problem externally, we naturally will keep the projection process alive and well. In the realization that all our perceived problems first emanate in our mind, then and only then will we realize the simplistic solution, which once again is forgiveness.
Well, Gene, that doesn't sound too complicated, but how should I best go about studying the Course?
Whenever possible, it's best to start studying the Course with the support of a group. There are certain fundamental insights that will ensure a successful start and hopefully eliminate as much confusion as possible. Even though it can be challenging to integrate A Course in Miracles into your life, it is not meant to be intimidating. God did not send us a message that we could not understand or implement in our life. The first book in A Course in Miracles is the text. It covers in great detail all the fundamental elements of the Course and is without a doubt the most difficult of the three to comprehend. The second book, a workbook for students, consists of 365 daily meditations or affirmations designed to do one a day for a solid year. The third book, a manual for teachers, is a relatively short one and is designed to answer some of the more common questions that might occur between the teacher and a student. The student should begin in whatever book he or she feels that the Holy Spirit is guiding them. These suggestions are based on my personal experience as well as others. I urge students to try always to ask the Holy Spirit. Whatever I say here is subject to detailed editing by the Holy Spirit. My first suggestion would be to start with the workbook and then integrate the text in Manual for Teachers into daily practice. The reason for this is the workbook is designed to give you a closeness to the Holy Spirit which one cannot achieve in the study of the other two books. The workbook is structured in such a way that it will change your view of the world because it will change your view of yourself. We presently believe we are at the mercy of a vengeful and wicked world. The workbook gradually convinces us that we are in control of what happens to us. Once again, it empowers you. The workbook consists of 365 daily meditations aimed to helping one remember who they are as this glorious child of God. One might ask, should we be strict in doing one a day? I personally have found that extremely rare. In fact, I've never heard of anyone doing the workbook lessons in 365 days. Most people will find the workbook lessons they like and do it for more than one day, or something comes up in their life and they have to miss doing a lesson. The workbook lessons are concerned with applications and not understanding. As it tells you, you don't have to understand it, just put it into application. Therefore, your understanding of how it works is immaterial. So lack of understanding is far from being a hindrance. It actually is helpful to admit that you don't understand. In admitting lack of understanding, thus this allows the Holy Spirit to give you a different way of looking at your perceptual world. Unlike the workbook, the text is planned as a lifelong study program. It goes into great detail covering the various ego doctrines and the fallacies of our egoic thought system. Students often ask if there are ways to help their understanding of the text. I would suggest these as just a few. It helps to remember that there is a singular spiritual master, Jesus himself, who is doing the dictating to Helen. Second, it is also helpful to carefully distinguish which view the author is referring to in any given section, either that of the ego or the Holy Spirit. If you are a novice, that is not always easily deciphered. A third bit of advice is to be aware of how the Course applies the many Christian terms used in the Course. Jesus gives these familiar words meanings entirely different from those attached to them in their Judeo-Christian roots. Fourth, the Course is written on three completely different levels. First is this cosmic level of heaven, where there is no beginning and no end. At this all-inclusive level, our understanding is beyond what most of us can vibrate to. The second level is a level of thought or mind action, and it is from this place that the third level, our world, comes into manifestation.
Gene, is the Course the only path back to God?
Tony, the Course states there are thousands of ways back to God. All will succeed because their ultimate goal is a reunion with God. The Course does point out there are two main religions in the world and that their purpose is to help you in the reawakening process. The first path dictates a heaven and a hell and defines what course of action one would take to get to heaven. Then they describe what sinful acts one would invoke a wrathful God that would condemn one to hell. The other main religion in the world focuses on long periods of meditation aimed at detachment from the body. The Course verifies that both pathways will work because their common objective is a reunion with God. It does state, however, that both paths will be tedious and very time-consuming. The Course points to a faster way to get out of pain and to experience the peace we all are so desperately seeking. The method the Course presents is the process of changing our relationship from what it refers to as special or reciprocal to holy or unconditional. In the healing of our relationships with our brothers and sisters, the healing is solidified with God.
Gene, why can't I hear the voice for God?
Tony, God is constantly speaking to us. We are often unwilling to listen to this mighty voice of truth because we feel that the illusionary voice of our ego has much more to offer us. In addition, we also experience the feeling of being unworthy to have this voice bestowed upon us. It is our own unwillingness to listen to the voice of love because we mistakenly believe we will have to sacrifice something to listen to this voice. Another egoic thought that gives rise to fear of listening to this mighty voice of truth emanates from holding grievances against our brothers and sisters. Therefore, we value the egoic voice more than we value the voice for love. If you don't think this is the case, next time you get angry with someone, watch how you want to punish them. With thoughts that are beating to the frequency other than love, there is no way we can hear the voice for love because it is beating to the frequency of love. We are on the wrong frequency or channel to hear this mighty voice. Through the process of forgiveness, our brothers and sisters, this aligning with the frequency of love will enable us to hear the voice for truth. To hear this voice for God, you must want the peace of God more than you want to punish others. It does not mean that you won't get angry, but you are willing to give up these unloving thoughts and replace them with the thoughts of love. Everything is simply a thought away. You think you have numerous choices to make throughout the day, but in actuality you have only one choice, and that being, do I choose to listen to the voice for love, or do I choose to listen to my egoic thoughts? Therefore, in any given instant, you are totally listening to one of the two voices. All Jesus wants from us is to want the peace of God a little bit more than we want to punish our brothers and sisters.
Gene, would you recommend someone to study the Course in Miracles and other spiritual paths at the same time?
Tony, I think especially at first, I think it is almost impossible not to incorporate other paths. I know when I first started studying the Course, I tried to make it seem like the Theosophical Society in unity. When we begin to study the Course and try to implement the teachings it sets forth, our minds are not blank. I have different information plugged into our computers, and we haven't hit any delete buttons. I personally think it takes years to wean oneself from other paths and try to make the Course the sole method of transportation to our reawakening to the fact that we are one with our Creator. I would like to point out that when I said it would probably take years to wean oneself, my particular view is somewhat clouded by my personal experience. When I got into A Course in Miracles, there was no supplementary material and no one to ask what things meant. So it took a relatively long time to decipher the doctrines presented in the Course. Now there are numerous books on the subject matter and various teachers to seek out to expedite one's understanding of the Course. Thus, in really relooking at what I just said, I personally think that the time it takes to decipher whether one wants to stay in the Course or find another spiritual path is greatly reduced. I also personally think that you will find numerous similarities between the Course, the 12-step program, Unity, and Science of Mind. I would think that the vast majority of those people studying the Course today come from one of those particular backgrounds. There hasn't been any study on that particular subject matter, but that has been my experience, and also the experience of other teachers that I have talked to. It has also been my experience that people either really love the Course or they want nothing to do with it. Therefore, those that really love the Course will eventually have to lay aside the other modalities that they have used in the past. It doesn't mean that they don't play with them, but it isn't their main forte.
Gene, I've heard the Course in Miracles uses quotes from the Bible and then reinterprets them. Please explain the need for it to do that.
One has to remember Jesus is the scribe of the Course. There's approximately 182 direct quotes and over 600 references from the Bible with a reinterpretation of the biblical message. And taking down the original messages from Jesus, and before it was put in a book format, Jesus made a reference to the fact that his message that was delivered over 2,000 years ago was greatly distorted. Therefore, he said that this time they would get it right. In reading the Bible, it seems as though you have a very judgmental, vindictive God, where in the Course, God is portrayed as a non-judgmental, loving deity. An example of that would be in the Bible where it states, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," would indicate a very vengeful God. What Jesus says is meant by that is give God your vengeance. An entirely different way of looking at that particular passage. Also, there are over 20 quotes from the Bible where Jesus simply states that he didn't say that. Therefore, there is no need for reinterpretation of that particular passage. An example of that would be where it states in the Bible, "Why hast thou betrayed me with a kiss?" in reference to Judas. And Jesus tells us that he didn't say that because Judas was his brother and didn't believe in betrayal.
Gene, we've discussed a lot of great information today, and for an introductory CD, it already could be a little confusing and maybe even a little conflicting for the first-time person that's just being introduced to this. What advice can you give us in closing, Gene, to someone that is just beginning to take a look at A Course in Miracles?
Well, my personal advice would be, if you have the book, if you're inclined enough to get the book, I would go through at least 30 workbook lessons. I think by that time, you'll have a little bit better understanding of what the Course is talking about. I think you can feel the love that is in the Course. And more importantly, I think after 30 days or 30 workbook lessons, simply ask the Holy Spirit, is this your particular path back to God? Remember, as I stated in the CD here, that the Course tells us there are thousands of ways back to God, and this is just one of the many. But Jesus particularly wants to tell us that this is the fastest way back to God. But are you ready? Are you ready to change your relationships from special to holy? Are you ready to take ownership of your life and to move forward in a loving way? And not everybody's ready to take ownership of their life. There's a lot of people that still want to blame other people. And so if you're still in that particular space in your life where you still want to blame other people, then the Course might not resonate with you. But if you're at a place in your life where it's not working, you've tried other modalities and they haven't given you the peace that you wanted, I think the Course is a beautiful alternative because it puts you in charge of your life.
Gene, thank you for your time today. I'm sure all of us will be excited to share this CD with our friends and family.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.